Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan on this Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, you can find it online at weather.gov/Alaska. Got a lot of things to talk about this evening. Well, first of all, flood watch remains in effect for Yakutat area, especially on up in the northern half of the Panhandle, as an atmospheric river, that is a plume of subtropical moisture, is riding out ahead of low pressure and a frontal system that's going to produce some heavy rainfall along the northeastern Gulf Coast into the northern half of the Panhandle. Starting today, this afternoon, evening, and lingering into the day, at least early Friday. And flooding is possible in some rivers and creeks, and there is a small risk for landslides as some of the rainfall, especially in the vicinity of Yakutat up in the St. Elias Wrangell Mountains, there could be as much as 6 to 8 inches. And we're going to see a cool and occasionally wet pattern continue for much of the state through mid and even the beginning of late August as we get past about the 21st. But let's look and see where we have the particular flood watches in effect, and they're generally east of Cordova there along the northeast Gulf Coast through Yakutat, which is where some of the heavier rainfall is going to fall. And then also in the vicinity of Sitka and Juneau, where perhaps a couple, even few inches of rain could fall in those locations. Less in the rain will fall, in the way of rain will fall further south there in the Panhandle. In fact, Ketchikan for tomorrow, Thursday, could see temperatures in the 70s there across southern parts of the Panhandle. So here from the forecast office at Juneau is indicating expected rain amounts and timing Wednesday p.m. this evening through Thursday morning there in the vicinity of Yakutat, 6 to as much as 8 inches of rain. And that rain will shift southeastward as that atmospheric river. The upper level winds turn from south-southwest to more southwesterly, and that'll force that moisture-laden air right up over the coastal mountains there across the northern half of the Panhandle, especially Thursday afternoon through Friday morning, and then eventually during the day, Friday into Friday afternoon, the southern end of the Panhandle there around Craig and Ketchikan. Will rainfall amounts to generally be around an inch or so, so not quite, nothing nearly as much as farther north. And then just a quick check of satellite imagery. We are looking at Look at the bright cloud tops there extending from the North Gulf all the way back into the North Pacific there off of the Alaska Peninsula. That is that plume of subtropical moisture riding northward ahead of low pressure that is situated southwest of Kodiak Island, and another low further south there across the North Pacific. And then as we look off to the north, there is some colder air. We're going to see some of the first snowfall of the season in the Brooks Range in the vicinity of Adigan Pass. Overnight into the day on Thursday, perhaps an inch or two of slushy snow could fall around Adigan Pass here as a result, pretty much above 3,000 foot elevation. Considering it's been quite warm there in the Fairbanks, Yukon Flats area, they had a warm summer with many days, probably 20 plus above 80 degrees. Well, there again, we have that plume of moisture riding northward from out of the North Pacific now up into the northern portion, western and northern portion of the Gulf, and that's going to be turning a little more northeastward and be zeroed in right around Yakutat here as we go overnight into Thursday morning and afternoon. So here are those two areas of low pressure, one situated there along the between the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, and another one further south down toward the North Pacific. Off to the north, weak low pressure in the northeast with a weak front along the Brooks Range. The precipitation there will be mixing with and changing to snow, especially in elevations that are above 3,000 feet. So again, there could be some minor slushy accumulations in higher passes like Adigan or Anatuvik passes. Further west in through the central western Aleutians and Bering, we have weak high pressure that is in place. But the most notable feature overnight, notice the rains increasing, that atmospheric river feeding that moisture there across the Gulf into the northeastern coast. And as we go through the day on Thursday, that focus will shift just a little further south, more into the northern half of the Panhandle. And then across the north, still some pockets of some mixed precipitation or snow on Thursday, confined though to the elevations, generally 3,000 to 5,000 feet in that realm. So the higher elevations, valley areas, should generally still see some lighter showers, and there could be a bit of a mix along the Arctic coast. And then low temperatures Thursday morning, we are looking for lows to stop in mid 50s for most of the southeast panhandle, and back toward south central areas we'll see some upper 40s along the Alaska range and generally lower 50s elsewhere. And then for Thursday afternoon, look at those warmer temperatures there down around Ketchikan, upwards to 72. A few spots could be a bit warmer than that with the sun. Pretty warm air mass down there where rain is steady, only upper 50s, Juneau, Haines, Skagway on over toward Yakutat, and then highs back toward Anchorage only around or a little above 60 degrees. Otherwise, most areas along the coast stopping upper 50s. And low temperatures Friday morning will be upper 50s across much of the southeast, that moist, warm flow of air coming in off of the Gulf there. But back toward the west, readings cool a little bit, mid 40s to around 50, lower 50s there for Friday morning, and high temperatures on Friday. We'll still manage lower mid 60s there toward Ketchikan. Upper 50s though, near 60 at best, the rest of the inner canals, and then back through the west, lower 60s, the Kenai, up through Anchorage and Talkeetna, as well as Glen Allen, 50s further west. And then along the Arctic coast, lows will generally be in the 30s, low to mid 30s, down around or a bit below freezing in through the Brooks Range, 40s in the Yukon Valley, and again, that potential for some snow overnight, slushy snow there, Adigan and Atuvik passes. And temperatures Thursday afternoon could still be near 60 at Fairbanks and Fort Yukon, a little warmer right along the Alcan border, could even be an isolated rumble of thunder there at Eagle down toward Northway. And then for Friday morning lows, lower mid 30s, so just above freezing along the Arctic coast, and then dip a bit below freezing along the higher elevations there of the Brooks Range, and generally lower to mid 40s through the middle and upper Yukon Valley, with upper 30s to near 40 in the Seward Peninsula. Temperatures on Friday certainly cooler than what they've been the past couple of weeks. We're going to see highs only in the 40s along the Brooks Range, perhaps around or just a bit above 60 Fairbanks, Fort Yukon down along the Alcan border. Otherwise, lower 50s as you head west, and upper 40s to near 50 degrees in the Seward Peninsula. And then a final check of looking across the southwest panhandle, we're looking for lows in the mid 40s, pretty common, upper 40s across the Aleutian chain, and high temperatures under cloudier skies and a few light showers. Generally low to mid 50s, though along the coast, upper 40s there to near 50 degrees. And as we extend out through the Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula could see highs mid to upper 50s, mid 50s in the Aleutians, and then lows Friday morning around or just above 40 degrees across much of the southwest interior. And as we get down King Salmon, heading out toward Cold Bay, lows mid to upper 40s and mid 40s out through the rest of the Aleutian chain, including Adak and further west. And then high temperatures Friday afternoon will generally be confined to the lower mid 50s on the other side of the Alaska Range. And as we get into the Yukon Delta, highs upper 40s to near 50 degrees, places like Nome and Emanak. And then as we take a check here of the temperature outlook for August 17th through the 21st. Statewide, we're going to continue to see temperatures average below normal, with the best chance of that happening there, centered on west central areas, including Norton Sound and Seward Peninsula. So don't look for any really warm weather like we had a week or two ago. And then for precipitation, as we head in toward, and especially beyond the 21st, it may start to dry out a little more in the west and southwest, but still above normal precipitation, central and northern areas, with a trend toward a little maybe drier, slightly below normal precipitation there across the southwestern part of the state. So overall, we're still going to see a cool and occasionally wet pattern statewide here as we head through mid-month.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for aviation weather, and if you are planning a flight for Thursday into Friday to close out this week, the main weather feature will be low pressure along the northern Gulf Coast, with a strong atmospheric river that's a flow of deep subtropical moisture producing heavy rains across portions of the northern panhandle on up through Yakutat, the Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains. Some areas there could see 6 inches or more of rainfall from this particular event. Elsewhere in the state, though, we will see IFR conditions along portions of the Alaska Range at times as we go through Thursday morning down along also the North Slope and portions of the Southwest Panhandle. And then as we go through Thursday afternoon, IFR conditions there, especially along the Gulf Coast east of Prince William Sound on through much of the Panhandle areas, with perhaps an isolated thunderstorm firing up along the Alcan border there, east central areas, the upper Yukon, upper Tanana Valley. And then for Friday morning, look for IFR conditions along portions of the Alaska Range for our eastern North Slope, and continuing across much of the Panhandle, at least the northern 2/3, and out over the northern Gulf, and then back into portions of the Bering Sea. Conditions in the interior will improve a bit for Friday afternoon, with still IFR conditions holding across the northern 2/3 or so of the Panhandle, and then also back out through the central Bering Sea up across much of the central and western Aleutians. Past conditions, Anaktuvuk will be IFR becoming MVFR. As we go into Adigan Pass, generally IFR conditions will hold throughout the day, though there could be a little more MVFR as you fly south of the south entrance. Lake Clark and Merrill will start out IFR and then improve a bit to MVFR later morning and afternoon. And Rainy Pass should see IFR conditions also become MVFR later morning and afternoon, as will Windy Pass. But keep in mind, some of the areas in and along there, near the Alaska Range, will be stuck in IFR conditions during the day. Isabel should start out IFR becoming MVFR. And Mentasta should be able to hold on to VFR conditions, though you go more toward the west or south, you'll see MVFR and transition even to IFR conditions, especially closer toward the coast. Tanita, generally IFR conditions should hold throughout Thursday. Portage will be a split, the east entrance and east side through Prince William Sound IFR, but then MVFR conditions along and west of the west entrance there. And then, of course, Chilkoot and White with the heavier precipitation moving into there, lower ceilings. IFR conditions are expected throughout the day on Thursday. Freezing levels are quite high across the southeast, generally around or above 12,000 feet. There's that warm plume of moist air coming in up from the subtropics, so the freezing levels will be much higher. But back to the west there, the Bering Strait, they're down below 2,000 feet and near the surface along the western half of the North Slope and along and just off the Arctic coast. And then we see freezing levels below 6,000 feet there across the eastern central Aleutians. Icing greatest potential will be across parts of the south central southeast areas, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains, as well as down through Yakutat and the north outer channels there, the coastal mountains of the northern Panhandle, 12,000 to a flight level of 20,000 feet. That'll fall back all the way to 2,000 to 10,000 feet there along the North Slope and Arctic coast. And precipitation, or I should say upper level winds, there are the strong jet stream winds from the southwest coming out up into the northern Panhandle, southeast part of the state, upwards to 110 knot upper level wind max at 30,000 feet from the southwest, helping to drive that moisture northeastward. And as we come down to 10,000 feet, the mid-levels, you see winds upwards to 65 knots from the southwest over the northern Panhandle in the vicinity of Yakutat. And as we come down further to 3,000 feet, that'll help support some turbulence there as 45-knot southwest winds coming into the area from Yakutat down toward, it looks like, Glacier Bay National Park into the northern waterways there. And weak high pressure remains out over the central and eastern Aleutians. And here's where the greatest threat for turbulence will be on Thursday, surface to 6,000 feet across much of the southeast. So there's your flight weather. And if you are heading out, definitely check the latest conditions and forecasts and have a safe flight.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists used this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Well, it's time now for the marine weather segment. We start off with the sea ice edge. And you can see much of the Chukchi Sea is open water, and we still have just a little brash ice and broken up pack ice there off of the Arctic coast. Otherwise, you have to go way up into the Arctic Ocean now. And this trend, we'll just continue to see the ice slowly melt here as we head through the week. Otherwise, no significant weather systems are expected, no high winds or anything that would really change conditions much. But as far as in the southeast panhandle, we have a low pressure system out in the western and northern Gulf that has an atmospheric river, and this is a belt of very moist and some stronger winds aloft from the south and southwest that are going to transport that subtropical moisture and produce locally heavy rainfall, upwards of 6 to as much as 8 inches there in the coastal mountains around Yakutat, and amounts of even 2 to 4 inches across portions of the northern panhandle, with lesser amounts farther south, starting this evening and lasting on into at least Friday afternoon in the far southern parts of the panhandle. And we'll expect winds to be picking up, especially there at Lynn Canal and the Inner Canal. South winds 30 knots, gusting to 45 knots there in Lynn Canal. So gale force winds there. But along the coast, strongest winds will be Sitka on up through Yakutat from the south, around 25 knots, and waves on the order of 10 to 12 feet. On Friday, not as windy, though. You can see the focus of the south winds kind of take more on over toward the southern two-thirds there of the panhandle, with winds 25 knots from the south and along the Gulf Coast there, waves right around 9 to 11 feet. Inner waterways, 15 to 25 knot winds, and waves 3 to 5 feet. As we go across south central areas for Thursday, winds will be strongest as you get east of Prince William Sound, 25 knots from the south, 11 footers there out in the open waters of the Gulf. Only 2 footers from the southeast, though, Prince William. And then back through the Cook Inlet, we are looking for south westerly winds 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to maybe 4 feet. A little bit higher from the south-southwest, and waves there 9 to 11 feet off the Kenai. Now on Friday, look for winds to kind of funnel through there, the mouth of Cook Inlet to north of Kodiak, and westerly at 30 knots with waves around 9 feet, whereas in the Prince William Sound, winds will be variable around 10 knots and waves only 2 feet. Lighter winds too there up in the up toward the terminal there of the Cook Inlet. Now across the Kodiak Island and the Southwest Peninsula, the Alaska Peninsula, winds westerly 15 knots on Thursday, area wide. Waves though still 7 to near 9 feet. Pacific Western Gulf, but only 3 feet there on the Bering side. And then on Friday, winds will be west-southwest there, through Shelikof Strait to 20 knots around Kodiak Island, waves 5 to 7 feet, 6 feet off northwesterly winds off on the Pacific side. And on the Bering side, winds will be westerly 20 knots and waves 4 feet. Fairly quiet conditions across much of the Aleutians on Thursday, generally variable winds around 10 knots, waves maybe 6 feet, 5-6 feet on the Pacific side and 3 to 4 feet on the Bering side. On Friday, look for variable winds continuing across the central and eastern Aleutians, only around 10 knots, and waves 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side and 5 or 6 feet on the Pacific side, but turning more easterly to upwards to 20 to 25 knots, especially once you get west of Adak with waves of 9 feet. And then across the west coast, look for along the coast north-northwest winds from Norton Sound down through as we get through Nunavik Island, and waves 3-4 feet, and variable winds around 10 knots there at St. Matthew down through St. Paul and St. Lawrence, and waves 3 to 4 feet. Winds will turn a bit more southwest to westerly there on Friday, 15 to 20 knots, waves generally falling in the 3 to 4 foot range. And then along the Arctic coast, winds will be westerly 10-15 knots, waves 2 to 4 feet, and more northwest to northerly from the Chukchi Sea down into the Bering Strait, and waves right around 3 to 5 feet. And then for Friday, we do expect southwest winds along the Arctic coast, 10 to 15 knots. But as we get down along the northwest coast, especially south of Wainwright and down toward the Bering Strait, southwest winds 25 to 30 knots and waves 5 to 6 feet. And there's that low pressure overnight Thursday, working its way up along the northern Gulf Coast with that atmospheric river bringing in locally heavy rainfall there across the northeastern Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle. Have a good night, everybody.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.